Let's start by introducing our guests again one more time, starting from my immediate right. Johnston Oleturana, Principal Lead, QLand Energy Consultancy. Very wide information about the energy sector. Asante for making time. You have Jerotich Sei, active citizen. I still can't get over that. Why do you like being called an active citizen? And also you know her from the Switch Off KPLC hashtag.
Yes, if you're on Twitter, you know her.
Why active citizen? I know people want to be called analysts, experts, but not active citizens.
Activists. I think we're avoiding, I'm avoiding the tyranny of expertise that seems to flood everywhere. So I'm just a citizen, I'm engaged, I'm active, and I'm alert.
An engaged citizen.
Active and alert.
We should also circle in ourselves.
At last I get to meet her.
Yeah. and we also have Sylvester Makaka, Energy Advisor, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Asante Sana. They're also widely involved with the Center for Energy Efficiency and Conservation. They do energy audits, so they'll tell us what the numbers say. So, back page of the Daily Nation. Is this where the concerns is? Audit queries, Health Ministry's purchases. So an audit report has accused the Ministry of Health of irregular financial dealings running into billions of shillings. Say, have your say.
Well, there are no surprises here, and obviously these queries remain queries, but I am struck by the number of scandals that have hit the Ministry of Health over the years. I also think about the medical equipment scandal where counties had this equipment imposed on them and they pay X number of million shillings every year just to maintain that equipment. There's the containers, the clinics that were never completed that are sitting somewhere in Miritini. So this is just a powerful course. I mean, this is what we're regularly seeing coming out. The question is, what action will actually be taken? Or are we operating, as we see, in an environment of complete impunity where the Auditor General says something and we gasp and we are shocked and we talk about it and you will cover it this morning and tomorrow another scandal will be in play. So the question is not so much the revelation, because we know money, we are bleeding money as taxpayers every day through shady deals and underhanded agreements. The question is, what will actually be done about it?
You know, the interesting thing is that this is the first scandal that we know of, still within the 2018-2019 budget, but it comes, what, 3 days, 4 days after we've officially begun the new financial year. Nevertheless, if media is reporting these cases, we always have conversations with these politicians every single day, not only as citizens, across media houses in Kenya. If the DPP and DCI are doing the job, if the AG is also doing his job, if judiciary is hearing these cases out, why isn't something being done? Why are we not seeing a step forward in terms of we're not going to no longer see such what do we call them, titles and headlines on our newspapers? What is the missing link here?
I think to comment on this, it's a question of how do we close audit queries raised through government or through the Office of the Auditor General. And it's important that even as media, we need to make a follow-up on these cases that are raised so that at some point in time, we need to close them. Whether that closure means the DCI has finalized its investigations, whether that closure means there are culprits, whether that closure means there was no money actually stolen, it should come out into the public domain so that we know what happened to these queries. That is very important.
Johnston, what do you make of it?
Mine is that I think the government has a process. And the first bit is that when these queries are raised, as just Makaka said, is that we need a closure. An audit does not necessarily mean culpability. It is an issue that needs to go back and be addressed. And then, given that the Auditor General has raised this issue, then it's upon the ministry to come and clarify and say, yes, these things are here. The clinics, whatever was procured, has not been dispatched for whatever reason, because again, it's a process. And for example, the ministry might come around and say, you know what, we got these things, we're supposed to send them to a health center that does not have power. Do we take it there? Do we retain it here until? So it's a process. But as Makaka said, we need a closure. Of course, as my sister mentioned here, again, this idea of every year in and out, these issues are raised, they're never resolved, they're never addressed conclusively. comes back to the public domain, and of course it's the role of the media to make sure that it's played out.
Okay.
Yes.
So say he mentions that our audit query is not exactly, doesn't show culpability, but this is a ministry that has been in place for years. When they cannot show vouchers for the payments that have been made, when they cannot show the contracts that were published, even though maybe those contracts were actually executed, but the simple fact that there's no clear paperwork to show what happened, isn't that in itself a problem? Because then it means either somebody was trying to cut a corner, either somebody got a kickback, or even the job was not done at all. Isn't that in itself a problem? Considering that there's a 7 billion shillings, that is the amount of money Kenya borrowed from China to buy CT scanners in 2015. So more than 3 billion on top of that could have been stolen, because we're talking about 10.9 billion.
Absolutely. If you send someone to the shops to buy something for you, won't you ask for a receipt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Won't you ask, where did this person go? Did they find the most affordable thing? If you can find it in Tuskys for a lower price than you'd find it in another supermarket, why did you go to the more expensive supermarket? There are all kinds of this is basic common sense. And so there's mischief afoot, definitely. And the fact that we're hearing about it 4 years down the road, that money went. You will never be able to retrace the steps and figure out where that 3 billion, what it was. So if an audit query comes up in 2019, and we're talking about something that took place in 2015, you can consider it gone. So it's mischief, a forethought, it's planned, it's deliberate. This is not, oh, I lost my voucher somewhere. And we're not talking about a household, we're talking about a ministry in a functioning government. Unless the government wants to tell us it's not functioning. Otherwise, there's no excuse for not having correct procurement procedures in place and accountable documentation to support that.
Mm-hmm. Putting aside our titles seated on this table, putting aside our titles, just being citizens in Kenya, do we still have hope in this government, given the fact that this week Ipsos released a report showing that about 40% of Kenyans feel that like the country is going in the wrong direction? When we have such headlines, do we still have hope in this government, in this nation?
Hope. You can never drop your hope. For sure you cannot. You see, governments are there for a time. Mm-hmm. And it's normally 5 years. We determined by our constitution that every 5 years we have a change of regime. I think going back to the scandals and whatever is happening in the health sector or what, we need to put this squarely on the oversight role, whether the oversight role of government sits in Treasury, whether it sits at the ministry, so that these things should not be coming on the 4 years down the line. It should be flagged in the same time it happens. Because oversight role means you are supervising, you are checking, you are making sure that things are moving according to plan, things are being delivered according to procedure. So if there's an oversight role, and that responsibility must rest somewhere, it cannot be left to the Auditor General to point it out 4 years down the line. Number two, if you are talking about hope, I think this country has invested a lot in the youth. And you cannot tell the youth to drop their hopes into this country. We can't. I think there is hope. We just need to realign our thinking and have a paradigm shift in the direction we want to take this country. Mm-hmm. So that the future of our youth, the future of Kenya does not lie in the past generation. It lies in the current generation going forward.
But the current generation, Johnson, not the ones who are stealing.
I think the most important thing to appreciate is that we are a constitutional democracy, and there will become a time that we have to determine whether we need to re-elect this government, of course through other persons, or we need to try something else. And that's the beauty about it, that after every periodical time, elections are here, and then we need to have them and decide what's the way forward. Again, we need to appreciate that until such matters are closed, they're still open. Mm-hmm. Whatever government is in place. We've seen actions taken against activities or action, such events that happened way back in the 60s, the 70s, because an audit query, until it is closed, it is still open. In terms of hope, we have to. We are the youth of this nation. I'm a young person, so I have hope in this country then it's us to determine whether really what kind of leaders we need to have and put them to question. That's when we cannot escape from it as youth of this country.
Charity?
I'm extremely hopeful, or else I would introduce myself as a disengaged citizen. So I do have hope. I believe that there's a way we can turn the tide, but in order to do so, we must address impunity that is at the heart of governance in Kenya today. And in fact, when we talk about democratic processes, as a friend of mine says, democracy in Kenya is like two hyenas and a goat discussing what they're going to have for lunch. And so you know the obvious loser is the goat. However feisty the goat might be, the two hyenas will have voted. And in this case, Wakenya happened to be the goat. And we are always being eaten for lunch by the hyenas. So even in terms of democracy, you want to ask yourself, how does this space function? It's not pro-poor, it's not pro-people. But I am hopeful, and this is why we agitate. This is why we advocate. This is why we blow the whistle. This is why we engage. Not to be enemies of the state or enemies, but we're enemies of theft, we're enemies of graft, we're enemies of corruption. But we're hopeful. And I'm a former youth. I'm not a youth anymore. I'm ex-youth. But we do this also for the 70% plus who are under the age of 30, who we want to secure a better future for. Because these things, as we say, if you hear something has happened 4 years down the road, then we are definitely talking about debts that children who are yet to be born will be paying because we are committing sins now, because there's impunity now in terms of how we procure, in terms of how we commit resources. These resources do not belong to the government. They do not belong to central bank. They do not belong to treasury. They belong to the people of Kenya. They belong to you and me. And this is why I want to keep on pushing the hopeful agenda. But the hopeful agenda does not come with sugar coating. It's kali, it's harsh, it's tough. It's truths that people often don't want to hear because they're benefiting from the impunity that exists and is sustained by this system that 4 years down the road tells you, oh, this happened and that happened. So yes, I have hope, but it's not naive hope. It is realistic hope.
So what happens at this point? Because many people are arguing, how do we get ourselves out of this? Others are saying that we should use technology, because in private entities, procurement is almost something that is very easy to follow through because they use a lot of technology. You don't have to look for the physical voucher that is back in 2015 for you to present it in 2019. Can the use of technology be used? Or can we use technology to counter this graft?
Technology would simply speed up the ways in which you forensically understand what happened. But if corruption is woven into the subculture of governance in this country, then there is absolutely no way you will eradicate it. If somebody means to steal, they will steal, technology notwithstanding. So this would just help us not flip through thousands of pages of paper vouchers, but it would still happen, because even in technologically bound and sound governance systems, corruption still takes place. That said, I still believe we need to automate. I mean, this is 2019, for heaven's sake. So if we're still doing paper vouchers, no wonder there's opportunity for leakage and slippage and shenanigans to take place behind the scenes. So yes, it would be one of the loopholes to be closed, but not the answer to ending corruption.
All right.
All right. So if you're not on the table, you're on the menu from that hyena.
Correct. Correct.
I was about to say that.
Yes. Before we take a commercial break, this is what to expect on the Standard newspaper. Detectives traced the fake letter to the DP's office, the chronology of events from June 28th all the way to July 3rd. Where we saw Dennis Itumbi arrested inside a restaurant opposite City Hall at around 1 p.m. yesterday. Itumbi then moved to DCI headquarters and thereafter the Muthaiga police station. Another big story that perhaps will grab your attention is on page 4, 2 national exams cleared in the new system. So the new system, the 26333, this is what Professor George Magoha says, that students who will take the 2 main tests in the new system, this is in grade 9, which is Form 2, and grade 12, which is grade 5, Form 5 rather. So under the 26333 education system, learners are expected to study for 2 years at pre-primary before proceeding to grade 1 to 6, which is in upper primary. Thereafter, they join junior secondary school before proceeding to the senior secondary school. That story is on page 4. I will hold my comments for also this specific story here. Which country to import 12.5 million bags of maize? We've had this conversation repeatedly here on Daybreak. Why are we still importing maize? We've seen even stories of how we import simple things like onions, eggs, pineapples, things that we grow here in Kenya. That's a conversation that we'll save for another day. And if you're following matters football, you might want to take a look at the last page of the Star newspaper. Tunisia, South Africa complete last 16 lineup. We know Kenya is no longer playing within AFCON, but we can continue to support it as an African nation. We need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive into our main conversation today, which is around energy. Listen, despite the fact that we've seen scandals within our energy sector, Kenya is still regarded as one of the best places in terms of power sector and how we perform in that area. Though there are a few loop ends, the biggest question facing the energy sector here in Kenya, or the power sector, is how do we lower costs, yet making sure that we remain competitive while improving the sort of services that we give to Kenyans. This conversation will be happening in just a few minutes, and we want you to be involved.
We should have Zinzi on the other side so that you respond to these questions. See you in just a bit.